JCole fooled you. For over a decade, the humble prophet, the chain-free guru, the conscious king who's too wise for beef. But what if I told you everything, every single thing you think you know about Cole is theater? Once you see how he really moves when nobody's watching, you'll never look at him the same way again. Picture this. It's 2014. Hip-hop is drowning in chains, flexing, ego-driven chaos. Every rapper trying to outstunt the next one. Instagram becoming a competition of who can look richer, who can flex harder, who can be more excessive. Then comes JCole, riding a bicycle through New York. Plain hoodie, no jewelry, talking about real problems instead of fake solutions. The culture exhaled. Finally, someone who gets it, someone above the nonsense. And for 10 years, millions of fans worshipped at the altar of this image. JCole isn't just rapper, he's a spiritual leader, a moral compass, a saint who accidentally happens to be really good at making music. But saints don't exist in hip-hop. They never have. JCole understood something about human psychology that most rappers never figure out. If you dress like a regular person, fans will project divinity onto you. No chains means he's not materialistic, he's not corrupted by wealth. He hasn't sold out. Basic clothes mean he's relatable. He's still connected to regular people. He hasn't forgotten where he came from. Riding a bike instead of flashing cars means he's environmentally conscious and humble. He cares about bigger things than impressing strangers. Every aesthetic choice screams, "I'm not like these other rappers who lost their souls for success. I'm different. I'm better. I'm what hip-hop should aspire to be." The music reinforced the image perfectly. Songs about depression, addiction, the dangers of fame, the emptiness of materialism, the struggles of everyday people trying to make it in a broken system. While everyone else was bragging about money and women and violence, Cole was having philosophical conversations about purpose and meaning and growth. He gave you the anthem for feeling lost with no role models. He gave you the meditation on friendship and loyalty with Love Yours. He gave you the social commentary on addiction with KOD. Every album felt like a therapy session disguised as a rap project. So its fan base built a religion around him. In their minds, JCole doesn't make mistakes. He makes statements. He doesn't have bad takes. He has lessons you're not ready to understand yet. He doesn't lose rap battles, he rises above them because he's too enlightened for petty competition. That costume was so convincing that even when evidence contradicted the image, people explained it away. When he said something questionable, it was taken out of context. When he made a misstep, it was part of a larger plan we couldn't see yet. When he backed down from confrontation, it was maturity, not cowardice. The saint narrative was too beautiful to let facts destroy it. Fans had invested so much emotional energy into believing Cole represented something pure in a dirty game. But here's what they missed. Being above the game isn't about what you wear or how you look. It's not about aesthetic choices or public relations. It's about how you move. It's about consistency between your words and your actions. It's about whether you apply your principles universally or only when it's convenient. And when you actually study Cole's moves, when you look at who he confronts versus who he avoids, when you examine the gap between his image and his actions, the holy man mask starts slipping.
The double standard that exposed everything. If JCole was really the pure-hearted big brother he claimed to be, if he was really the moral center of hip-hop trying to guide the culture toward better values, explain this. Why did he handle Lil Pump completely different from Lil Durk? Let's break this down, because this double standard reveals everything about how Cole really operates. With Lil Pump, a young kid making ignorant music but ultimately harmless, Cole dropped a full public sermon. No phone call first, no private conversation, no attempt to reach out and actually mentor the kid. Just a nationwide lecture disguised as a song about how this confused teenager was damaging hip-hop culture. He made 1985 an entire track dedicated to telling Pump and artists like him that they were destroying the culture, that their music was empty, that they were being used by the industry, that they needed to grow up and take responsibility for their influence. It was presented as tough love from a concerned elder statesman. The fans loved it. Finally, someone was calling out the mumble rap era. Finally, someone with the platform was standing up for real hip-hop. Cole was the hero the culture needed. But with Lil Durk, a grown man whose music literally celebrates street violence, whose songs have been connected to real-world consequences, whose lyrics explicitly glorify murder and gang activity, suddenly the moral teacher discovered the concept of privacy. Now it's behind-the-scenes conversations. Now it's grown man talks. Now it's positive collaborations like All My Life, where they're making music together instead of Cole publicly challenging Durk's impact on young listeners. Wait, what happened to the public accountability? Where was the concept record about how murder music affects communities? Where was the stern lecture about glorifying death and making killing sound cool to impressionable teenagers? Where was the Big Brother energy when it came to someone whose music arguably has way more dangerous real-world implications than anything Lil Pump ever made? The pattern became clear. Cole reserves public shaming for targets the internet already clowns. He lectures people who are already easy to dismiss, who don't have real power in the industry, who can't actually hurt his career or his physical safety. But he uses private diplomacy, positive collaboration, and silent respect for anyone who might actually be dangerous, either to his career or his physical well-being. Think about what that means. The moral compass of hip-hop only points toward righteousness when the path is safe. The fearless truth-teller only tells truth to people who can't hit back effectively. That's not moral leadership. That's calculated cowardice disguised as wisdom. That's someone who wants credit for being brave without ever actually taking a real risk. The selective courage problem. Once you see the Pump versus Durk double standard, you start noticing it everywhere Cole goes. It's not an isolated incident. It's a pattern that defines his entire approach to conflict and confrontation. Look at everyone Cole has ever checked on records. SoundCloud kids who were easy targets and already being mocked by the culture, Yachty-type rappers the culture was already skeptical about, artists who represented trends that were already fading, Kanye's insecurities during moments when Ye couldn't really fight back because he was already in a vulnerable position publicly, during his most unstable periods when a response was unlikely because Ye was going through very public mental health struggles. Every single target shares the same characteristics. They're either young and powerless, already damaged in the public eye, or too unstable to mount an effective response. Cole goes after wounded prey, not healthy competition. You know who you don't see him lecturing? The actual street rappers promoting real violence to millions of young listeners. The industry executives exploiting young artists and trapping them in predatory deals. The major label machinery that creates the systemic problems he pretends to care about in his music. You don't see him calling out the CEOs who profit from destructive music. You don't see him challenging the streaming platforms that prioritize violent content because it drives engagement. You don't see him confronting the power structures that actually shape what gets promoted and what gets buried. Why? Because those targets have real power, real connections, real consequences for anyone who can challenge them publicly. Going after a label executive could cost you industry relationships. Challenging the streaming economy could hurt your numbers. Confronting actual street figures could have real-world implications. Cole wants credit for being the brave truth-teller, but only when the truth is safe to tell. He wants to be seen as fearless while carefully avoiding anyone who might make him prove it. He positions himself as hip-hop's moral authority, while only exercising that authority on people who can't threaten his position. That's not moral leadership. That's moral opportunism. That's someone who uses righteousness as a marketing tool, not as an actual guiding principle. And once you see this pattern, you realize the whole humble prophet image is just camouflage. It's a costume that lets him pick safe battles while his fans give him credit for being courageous.
The Kanye's situation, fake prophet exposed, nothing revealed Cole's true nature more than how he handled Kanye West over the years. This situation alone dismantles the entire saint narrative if you actually pay attention to the timeline and the contradictions. On one hand, he builds an entire verse around a fallen idol clearly modeled on Ye. The ego, the contradictions, the public meltdowns, the disappointment of watching your hero self-destruct in public. It's presented as this profound, painful reflection on what fame does to great artists,
what happens when genius gets corrupted by celebrity. The let Nas down approach to Kanye was supposed to hit the same way. Respectful disappointment from a younger artist who looked up to the legend but can't co-sign the current behavior. It's framed as tough love, as someone who cares enough to say the hard truth even when it's painful. Cole's fans treated it like prophecy. Finally, someone was addressing Kanye's decline with nuance instead of just mockery. Finally, someone was holding Ye accountable from a place of love instead of hate. But then, when it served his image better, when the public temperature around Kanye changed, when it became more advantageous to show grace than judgment, Cole softened the whole thing. Suddenly, it wasn't really about Kanye. It was just a general meditation on celebrity culture, on how fame affects artists in general, on the universal struggles of maintaining sanity under public pressure. And later, when Kanye's public perception shifted again, Cole is showing Ye love and praise like none of that false prophet's energy ever existed. Now they're cool. Now he's defending Kanye's genius. Now the critique is forgotten or recontextualized as something that was never that serious to begin with. A real prophet stands on what he said, especially when it's supposedly coming from a place of spiritual truth. If you really saw something troubling in someone's behavior and spoke on it from a place of genuine concern, you don't just erase that concern when the optics change. A fake prophet throws the stone, then rewrites history when it's convenient. A fake prophet adjusts the message based on what makes him look best in the current moment. That's not growth or evolution or maturity. That's damage control to keep the saint image spotless. That's someone who uses moral positions as chess pieces, moving them around the board based on strategy rather than actual conviction. If Cole was really the concerned big brother he claimed to be, the Kanye situation would have played out with consistency. Either you believe Ye's behavior was destructive and you stand on that, or you never say it publicly in the first place. But Cole wanted it both ways. He wanted credit for calling out the fallen idol when that narrative was popular. Then he wanted credit for showing grace and understanding when that became the more favorable position. That's not leadership. That's opportunism with a moral vocabulary.
The boogeyman costume that didn't fit. Here's where Cole's calculated persona met its biggest test. For years, while Kendrick Lamar was quiet, working in the shadows, barely releasing music but maintaining this aura of danger, Cole started flirting with that same energy. He saw how the culture respected Kendrick's silence, how the mystery made him more intimidating. So Cole started talking different. For months leading up to the Drake and Kendrick situation, he was dropping hints that he was the problem, the silent sniper, the one who could really shake the room if he wanted to, the guy who's been holding back out of respect, but don't mistake that for weakness. He was trying on Kendrick's boogeyman persona like it was a jacket he saw in a store, talking about how he could go crazy if pushed, how he has been choosing peace but he's built different when it's time for war, how people don't really want to see that side of him. His fans ate it up. Finally, aggressive Cole. Finally, the monster underneath the humble persona. But Kendrick earned that reputation by actually being terrifying when provoked. When Kendrick threatens you, the culture believes it because he's proven he can destroy careers with precision. His boogeyman status came from actually being the boogeyman, not from talking about being one. Cole was just trying it on like a Halloween costume. He was method acting as the intimidating force without ever having to actually prove he could be that person. Then, Like That drops, and Kendrick essentially says, if you really think you're that type of problem, prove it. This was Cole's moment. This was what he'd been positioning himself for. Years of hinting at having that level of smoke. Years of his fans claiming he was just choosing peace over violence. Years of building up this idea that beneath the humble exterior was a killer who just hadn't been provoked yet. Finally, someone called his bluff and gave him the platform to prove all the boogeyman talk wasn't just marketing. The exam he failed in public. 7-minute drill was Cole's response. This was supposed to be the moment where the fake humble act dropped and we saw the real monster underneath. This was supposed to be the reveal. Instead, we got a lukewarm diss questioning the catalog of an artist the whole world knows is more critically acclaimed than Cole himself. Surface-level jabs about Kendrick's recent output and Grammy wins. Someone who sounded like he was trying to convince himself he was angry more than actually being angry. It felt like someone cosplaying as aggressive rather than someone who actually had that energy naturally. It felt like someone reading from a script titled, "How to Be Intimidating," rather than someone who genuinely had smoke. The streets didn't move. Hip-hop didn't react like they'd witnessed something dangerous. Twitter wasn't in shambles. Blogs weren't declaring war. Instead, people were confused. This is what we were supposed to be scared of? This is the monster that's been hiding underneath the humble prophet? This is the silent sniper who could shake the whole game? And Cole felt that energy immediately. He could see the culture wasn't buying it. He could see that the boogeyman costume was too heavy for someone who'd spent a decade perfecting the guru act. He couldn't switch personalities that quickly because the boogeyman was never real. It was just another calculated image experiment. The disconnect was too obvious. You can't spend 10 years being the mature, peaceful, above-the-drama figure and then suddenly flip a switch and become the ruthless competitor. The culture could smell the performance. So, what did the supposed moral leader do when faced with actual consequences for his actions? He folded in the most public way possible.
The apology that saved no one. Cole came out and said he apologized because he didn't want to lose friends. He valued the relationships over the competition. He didn't want to participate in tearing down another black artist just to prove a point. He chose peace over pride. His fans called it maturity. They called it growth. They called it the kind of enlightened decision that proves why Cole is different from everyone else. Look at how evolved he is. Look at how he prioritizes humanity over ego. But here's what actually happened when you look at the results instead of the rhetoric. He still lost Kendrick as any kind of ally. The apology didn't repair anything because Kendrick never asked for an apology. Kendrick asked for competition. Cole offering an apology to a challenge is like someone asking you to race and you responding by saying you don't want to hurt their feelings. He still damaged his relationship with Drake because Cole stepped in, then immediately stepped back out. You can't play both sides and expect either side to trust you. The big three dynamic he was trying to preserve died the moment he stepped in the ring, then immediately stepped back out. You can't claim to be part of a trinity of greatness and then publicly refuse to compete when one of the three challenges you. If the goal was protecting friendships, apologizing to someone who just publicly challenged you was never going to magically restore harmony. All it did was make everyone involved look at you differently. Kendrick saw weakness, not maturity, not wisdom, weakness. Someone who talked tough then couldn't back it up when it was time to actually demonstrate. Drake saw betrayal. You were supposed to be his friend. You jumped in, then jumped out, leaving him to handle the full weight alone. The culture saw someone who talked tough but couldn't handle the consequences. Someone who wanted to be perceived as dangerous without ever having to prove it. Someone who folded the moment the pressure got real. The only people who bought the mature, peace-loving explanation were the fans who needed to protect their image of Saint Cole. The fans who had invested so much into believing he was different, who needed the apology to be wisdom instead of fear. The apology didn't save the friendships. Kendrick didn't embrace him afterward. Drake didn't thank him for choosing peace. The big three didn't reunite in harmony. It only saved the character. It only preserved the image of Cole as the guy who's too enlightened for rap beef. It gave his fans a narrative they could use to explain away what everyone else saw as a public retreat. The homie who chose no sides. Even after all that chaos, even after entering a war and then abandoning it, Cole is still calling Drake his homie, telling him not to listen to Kendrick or the fans who are dissecting Drake's career. But look at the actual scoreboard when the dust settles. He started on Drake's side, or at least that's what it seemed like based on the big three unity they'd been projecting for years. Then he tried to pivot to the middle by apologizing and claiming he valued peace over competition. And he ended up with neither giant really standing next to him. Kendrick isn't embracing him because the apology looked like fear, not wisdom. Kendrick didn't ask for peace, he asked for proof. Cole offering an apology to a competitive challenge is basically admitting you're not really in the conversation. Drake isn't fully trusting him because if you were really my friend, why jump in at all? And if you're going to jump in, why quit? The irony is beautiful. His attempts to play peacemaker between titans, his attempts to be the mature voice of reason who rises above the drama, left him isolated from both camps, with only his disciples still treating him like he handled everything perfectly. He wanted to be Switzerland, but instead he became no man's land. Neither side trusts him, neither side respects the move, and the culture at large saw through the whole performance.
The mask finally comes off. So when people say, "How can you hate Cole?" He rides a bike, he wears no chains, he's humble, he doesn't chase clout, he makes conscious music, he's a good person. Understand what you're really looking at. Those aren't signs of a better person. Those are props in a decade-long performance designed to make you think he's above the game while he plays it more calculated than anyone else. The bike doesn't represent humility, it represents marketing genius. A man who understood that in a culture obsessed with excess, the appearance of simplicity would make him seem profound. It's branding, not philosophy. Think about it. In an industry where everyone is trying to look richer than they are, where everyone is renting cars and faking lifestyles, what's the contrarian move? Look as regular as possible. Make people think you're not seduced by the material world. The no chains aesthetic doesn't represent spiritual enlightenment. It represents someone who realized that rejecting materialism visually would make fans project depth onto him intellectually. If he doesn't wear jewelry, he must be deep. If he doesn't flex, he must have figured out what really matters. But it's just aesthetic. It's just marketing. Because rejecting chains while still chasing commercial success, while still wanting to be recognized as one of the greatest, while still competing for status and position, isn't enlightenment. It's just a different uniform for the same game. The mature response to conflict doesn't represent evolution. It represents someone who learned that apologizing for aggression gets you more credit than actually being capable of it. That backing down can be spun as rising above. That retreat can be rebranded as wisdom. The pattern you can't unsee. Once you see the pattern, once you understand how Cole actually operates, you can't unsee it. He lectures people who can't hurt him. He collaborates with people who can. He talks tough when it's safe. He apologizes when it's tested. He builds an image of being above the game while constantly positioning himself within it. He wants credit for courage without ever taking real risks. He wants to be seen as a moral leader while only applying morality when it's convenient. Every move is calculated. Every decision is about protecting the image. Every risk is carefully measured to ensure it's not really a risk at all. That's not a saint. That's a strategist. And there's nothing wrong with being a strategist except when you convince millions of people you're something else entirely. JCole is not the messiah of hip-hop. He's not the moral compass pointing the culture towards salvation. He's not the humble giant who's too wise for the petty games other rappers play. He's a talented, calculating artist who perfected the most sophisticated image campaign rap has ever seen. He figured out that looking holy was more profitable than actually being dangerous. He realized that the appearance of humility would make him seem deeper than the music actually was. And the moment someone forced him to choose between maintaining the character and proving he had that real energy underneath, he chose the character every single time. The boogeyman crown he tried on crushed him the second Kendrick told him to prove he deserved it. The tough talk evaporated the moment it was tested. The image couldn't survive contact with reality. Once you see that pattern, the selective courage, the calculated conflicts, the costume that fooled millions, you can't unsee it. Every future move will be filtered through this understanding. Every statement will be analyzed for the gap between image and reality. The saint was always an act. The guru was always a performance.
and the man behind the bicycle has been laughing all the way to the bank while you worshipped an illusion he created specifically for you to worship. That's not enlightenment. That's not moral leadership. That's not being above the game. That's the greatest con in hip-hop history. And it's finally time to stop falling for it.